You're listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 51. Today on Self Saturdays, I am sharing my own personal experience with a limiting block that I have and continue to experience every so often. The belief that I am not enough. It's not an easy one to navigate, but I am getting a little bit better at rising above it. So grab yourself a cup of organic tea and let's dive on in. You are listening to Love Unplugged, a podcast focused on love in all its forms. I'm your host, Jessica Fergon, hopeful romantic and founder of Project Love. I found that too often love is set aside or taken for granted, and we tend to forget how to care for ourselves and our important relationships in the day-to-day chaos. So let's slow down, tune in, and begin our journey of rediscovering love. From honest heart-to-heart conversations with real couples and knowledgeable guests to deep dive reviews of new products and services that will help you feel beautiful inside and out. If you're looking for relatable advice or wanting to be inspired by real-life love stories, you've come to the right place. Without further ado, let's get to it. Hello, loves. Welcome back to another episode of Self Saturdays with me, Jessica Fergon, your host and guest. With this series, I made a commitment to not only share the good, but also the not so good. So I knew this time was coming when I had to get a little bit more vulnerable with you guys and share some personal stuff. And I'm not going to lie, I've been dreading this all week. So I want to start off by saying I am drinking my favorite Wosh Wellness tea just to help calm my nerves a little bit. It's been a hectic week here for me, so I am drinking me time, which is the best for calming my nerves. And I also have an essential oil diffusing in my sage diffuser this time, and this one is actually yoga. I love this one so much. It smells so good, but it's also very relaxing. Obviously, with the name yoga, you should be able to expect that. But let's get back to the episode. So talking about personal blocks and all that goes on internally is not something I do easily at all. I tend to keep things in and I power through whatever is happening internally or externally, and it's kind of my way of coping with things, which may or may not be the best choice. I'm fully aware of that. But that's a topic for another day. So those that know me well who are listening to this episode, you're probably sitting there going, wow, Jessica's actually going to open up and share today, which is very interesting. So today I am talking about one of my most challenging limiting blocks that I've had to navigate, and that is I am not enough or I am not good enough. This is something that I have been working on for quite some time, and I don't think that these thoughts ever truly go away or magically heal. I think it's in the way that you handle it when it does rear its ugly head that truly matters. So I always wondered where this belief started, and I think it started in my childhood, something that I took on as my own story from someone else. So learning everything that I've learned to date with, belief systems and thoughts and whatnot, I definitely feel like this belief is rooted in a scarcity mentality, which makes total sense. So I didn't have a wealthy upbringing. My mom was a single mom raising 2 kids on her own on the other side of the country from our entire family. I mean, she moved here from Quebec when I was really, really young. I was 5 years old. She didn't really speak English. Me and my brother didn't either. And we moved all out here completely on our own. She didn't have a job. We only knew a few people out here. And that's huge. Like that's huge way back in the day, right? Like we're talking about 30 years ago. So looking back now, I realized that she was so incredibly strong and resilient, but she had her own limitations and struggles, which I'm fully aware of. But she always made sure that we had food on the table, a roof over our heads, clothes to wear, and the list goes on and on. We didn't have a beautiful house, no. We didn't have all the brand name foods and whatnot, no. And yeah, I did shop at thrift stores and wear hand-me-downs. And I always remember there was a struggle with money. She had her own limiting blocks that I remember she really struggled with. And I honestly feel like not feeling like she was enough was a big one for her. So for as many years that I can remember, I would always feel like I wasn't good enough all throughout elementary school, throughout high school, my jobs after high school, even up till this day. So I would compare myself to others. I would wonder, how come they have this? How come they can do that? But I can't. I'd work so damn hard to prove myself to others, yet I would still feel like I wasn't good enough, even though I knew that I was killing it. Like I was doing a damn good job, but that still didn't make me feel like I was good enough. I would always find something that would validate the belief that I had. So either I wasn't good enough to sit at the table as so-and-so because I didn't have this education, or I didn't have this knowledge, or I didn't have this skill set, or I didn't have a good understanding of this, or I wasn't good enough at doing this task, or something like that, or I wasn't good enough to deserve to make X salary because I always made excuses for everything, right? It was pretty bad now that I look back on it. And I've mentioned this before, but I honestly believe that the entrepreneurial journey is definitely aligned with the self-discovery journey. So I've always had struggles with this block in the past, but it wasn't until I started my blog and this podcast that it finally came to surface and required me to deal with it head on. So things that I think are directly related to not feeling like I am good enough is comparison, judging myself, fear of rejection, and fear of failing. So as you know, starting a blog and a podcast, having to be on social media, you're definitely going to get stuck in the comparison game at least once. And at the beginning for me, it was a tough one or a tough pill to swallow. I'm not going to lie, I got stuck in that comparison game a lot. It's so hard at the beginning because I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I had no clue how to start a side hustle, a business, or a blog whatsoever. I just kind of threw up a website, did my best. I threw up Instagram, I had no idea what I was doing. So add that to seeing what everybody else is doing, all the great content that they're putting out there, all the beautiful pictures of this amazing life that they're experiencing, their bios saying that they turned their side hustle into a 7-figure business in 3 years or sometimes less. The amount of followers that they had just blew my mind. And every day that went on after starting that blog, seeing what everybody else is doing just made me feel even less good enough because I wasn't getting anywhere. It took me a while to build my following. I'm not going to lie. It was a long process, one that I definitely don't regret because it's where we are today and I love this community. But it was tough. It was really, really tough. And seeing everything on social media really, really brought me down quite a few times. Now, I am getting better at this just because I definitely don't let myself go down that rabbit hole too far if I do begin that journey. But everybody will experience this now and then with social media. It's just how it is. It's just important how you take yourself out of it as quickly as possible once you do go down that rabbit hole. But I started judging myself quite a bit, meaning that based on what everybody else is doing, I wasn't doing good enough. I wasn't giving enough time or giving enough quality to be able to succeed. I judged myself left, right, and center with this blog and this podcast at the beginning. I'm doing a little bit better now. I'm showing myself a lot more compassion and grace because I know what I have on my plate and this isn't my full-time job or my only job. So I'm trying to be a lot more balanced in my thinking with that. But another one that I had was the fear of rejection. And that really hindered me from putting myself out there. And because I was always scared of being rejected by people. So, sending them invitations to being a guest on the podcast, it took me a little bit of time to finally get comfortable with receiving no's. No's are okay. It's nothing personal, but at the beginning, it's a huge rejection when you get turned down. You tend to take it personally. You really do. So it kind of stops you from wanting to put yourself out there because you're so scared that they're going to say no because it's you they're saying no to. They're saying no to you, not the opportunity or just because it doesn't, fit in their schedule at this moment. It's a personal thing. which is totally wrong. It took me a few no's to finally get my head wrapped around it, but now when I get a no, I'm like, that's totally fine. That just means that it's not the right time for us to connect at this time, or it's just not the right pairing. So maybe this person is just not a good fit at this time for the podcast. Like everything happens for a reason, right? Or maybe they just have so much on their plate and they just can't take anything more on, and it has nothing to do with you. It's just they just can't fit it into their schedule at this time, which is totally okay, because I have the same feelings sometimes as well, where I might need to say no to something because I just don't have the capacity for it. But it's nothing to do with that person. It's just at this time, I just feel like I need to say no for my own well-being type thing. So there's just so much more to rejection than it being personal. Like it has nothing to do with it being personal the majority of the time. The other one that I had was the fear of failing. So I struggle with this quite a bit. I refuse to fail. I am very type A. I am a perfectionist. So failure is just not so much in my vocabulary. It's definitely something that I am navigating, and I'm trying to get through the fear of failing and just understanding that failing is just part of the game and it's an opportunity to learn, right? It's taking the negative out of it and looking at it as an opportunity. So that's definitely where I'm trying to take my mindset, but the fear of failing hindered me so much. I think it really stopped me from putting myself out there because I didn't want to take a chance of failing and doing anything wrong. Another one that I recently came across was I would rely on other people's opinions to validate how I should feel about myself. So recently, as I was trying to figure out my recent pivot, I was kind of prompted to ask somebody that knows me well, what they thought I was really good at, what they thought I brought to the table as strengths. And then I stopped myself and I was like, why do I need them to tell me what I'm good at to validate what I already know? So I know my strengths. I know my skills. I know what I'm able to bring to the table. I already know all this, and I don't need somebody else to tell me so that I believe it myself. And then one day I was listening to something. I forget what it was. I don't know if it was a podcast or a video or whatnot, and I don't remember who it was. I can't even find it on Google, but it's a quote. And basically the quote said, "You were born enough. You have nothing to prove to anyone else but yourself." And I think it's a take on Maya Angelou's quote, but it really hit home for me. I was born with everything I need to have everything I want and deserve. Why do I need to prove anything to anyone else? I just need to prove it to myself. So what I've been doing to rise above this specific block is practice awareness. So I think being aware is so important. I am aware when this block comes up. I acknowledge it. I'm not great at journaling. I think my last journal session ended with me literally writing, "I hate journaling. I am done with this crap. Good night." It was pretty funny. I was pretty frustrated at that point. But I write it down and I get super clear on exactly what is prompting this belief to surface. So why am I exactly feeling this and what has triggered it? So I try to get really clear on what I'm feeling, what triggered it, why am I believing this, and I put it on paper so that I'm able to see it. My next step is to tell myself this is not my truth. It's just my inner critic, or as Melissa Ambrosini says, my inner mean girl, trying to keep me stuck in a fear-based belief, and it has zero power over me. So it's not my truth. It's not actually the truth. I know my truth. So I acknowledge it, but I don't listen to it anymore. And I don't allow it to direct any decisions or my life. So when I'm in that mindset or I'm, experiencing this block, I refuse to make any decisions while I'm in this belief or in this little bubble. Until I am out of it, I pause everything. My next step is I make the conscious choice to choose love over fear. So this is where I try to incorporate my self-love practice. So I'll put on an uplifting podcast. I'll read a book that will empower me to rise above it. So there's lots of books out there, podcasts that talk about limiting blocks and things that you can do to rise above it, other people's experiences, which I think hearing from others and how they deal with it is very uplifting as well. And then I think about what I'm grateful for, what I've accomplished in my life, and I meditate on that. So this reminds me that I am good enough. I am capable of attracting or achieving anything I want in my life. The only block is me, and I'm not about to stand in my own way. Like, there's enough things out there that can stand in your way sometimes, and I'm not going to be the one to do it. So when I sit there and I practice gratitude and I think back over everything that I've accomplished in my life and what I'm good at and what I succeed at, this reminds me that I am actually good enough. I am achieving in my life. I am accomplishing things that I've set out to. So it changes my mindset, raises my vibration, and then I'm able to kind of ease my way out of that. So that is me. That is where I am at right now, and I hope my experience and how I navigate this block, helps you in any way possible to rise above yours as well. So if you want to connect with me, head on over to Instagram. My handle is Project Love Co. And then send me a DM. Let me know what you guys are navigating right now. What blocks are you going through? I love hearing from you guys, and I definitely want to connect more, and I want to hear everything that you're experiencing, and maybe I can help you in any way that I can. You can also connect with me through my website, www.projectloveco.com, where you can sign up for my love letters, where I will be sharing more personal experiences and advice, as well as you'll be the first to know of any giveaways and things like that coming up. So I hope you guys have a wonderful Saturday, and I hope you take some time to invest in yourselves today. I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to www.projectloveco.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another unplugged conversation.